California, good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Today we have ourselves a busy show for you all as we have a lot to get into, such as the MLS has begun, and the LA Galaxy and LAFC are off to a good start. Can they keep it up, or will it be like last year where they stumbled down the stretch? And the Lakers just can't seem to find a way to win. They got swept by the Clippers in the season series, and they just can't seem to pull out the dub. Speaking of dubs, they play the Warriors tonight at 5:30 p.m., which is about less than 90 minutes away from now. I will have a guest to bag on the Lakers. Yes, we're bagging on some Lakers tonight. And college basketball is starting to wind down as conference tournaments are on the horizon. Where will USC and UCLA fall, and all the other teams in Southern California? All that more here on the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome all to another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Saturday afternoon. Let's get a little explanation on why I am here on Saturday, or why I'm live on Saturday. Okay, first of all, for those that actually listened on Thursday, I was like about 11 minutes into my show. I was basically going to do my show for an hour and then have another one on Saturday. Probably have that one for like maybe an hour. But unfortunately on Thursday, I had a mini blackout. It was actually a partial blackout at my house, partial blackout in the neighborhood. And unfortunately, the Wi-Fi got disconnected and I was unable to do my show. So sadly, there was no show, and I had to cancel and move everything now to today. So I apologize to everyone. I know it's been trying times for me in the SoCal Supreme Sports Show with work and all that, but honestly, I'm still going to represent for the people. I'm not going to let y'all down. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm trying my hardest. Anyway, so with all that out of the way, let's get on into the Southern California sports. But first and foremost, we have a word from our sponsors. The first sponsor for IE Sports Radio is the Southern California Warriors semi-pro football team. The world of semi-pro sports is unlike any other sports organization. Players pay to play in hopes of so many different outcomes, whether it's playing to try to get filmed for professional teams, big-time colleges, or just playing to stay in shape. No matter what, all SoCal players and all semi-pro players have one thing in common, and that's playing for the love of the game. The SoCal Warriors have been on a quest to earn titles for players and give them second chances since 2017. Whether you're in Southern California or anywhere in the world, give semi-pro sports a chance if you love your sport. You may get that second chance you've been waiting for as an athlete, because everyone in the world deserves a second chance. You can follow them on Twitter at SoCal Warriors, on Instagram at Southern California Warriors, and on Facebook by typing in the word Southern California, then Warriors. And if you're in the area, Fallbrook High School, definitely do check out one of their games. They are absolutely phenomenal. I've been to a couple of them. I've PA announced. They're all down-to-earth people, and they work hard. Just need to throw that out there. Second sponsor for iSports Radio is Background Check International Businesses. Are you looking to background check a new hire on? Let Kit Freeman take care of that for you. Kit has managed and founded Background Check International Businesses since 1994 and is here to help you with the screening process. Contact Kit and let him help make the hiring process that much easier. This business, however, is used for professional background checks and not for the use of any crimes such as identity theft or other illegal activity. So, unfortunately, you can't use this on your rival who is basically having his way over like these big time businesses and whatnot when it comes to like fraud. So there's that. They do not have Twitter or Instagram, but they do have Facebook. As long as you type in the search bar background, then check, then international, then put a little dashy dash, then put BCI. Then iSports Radio has their social media. They are on Twitter and Instagram at iSports Radio. They're also on Facebook by typing the word iSports Radio. They also have their website, www.isportsradio.com. And same with Background Check International Businesses. They also have the website, www.bcint.com. But back to iSports Radio. For the last 7.5 years, iSports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, other authorized media personnel, and even legendary coaches to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports and cities around the country. All the while, iSports Radio has been by the fans and for the fans. And with your help, iSports Radio is ready to take the next biggest step. When you go to iSportsRadio.com, you will see a Patreon link where there are 5 different tiers, with the first one starting off at $5 a month. This donation gets you a shout from all 32 of our shows. Higher tiers include iSports Radio merchandise, access to our podcasting university, and even a chance to be featured on a segment of iSports Radio's flagship show, The Defining Moment. Thank you, everyone, for helping make iSports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. And big shout to our fan of the month, Spuds at Spuds Chat. He is a Rams fan in San Diego. He and I teamed up in a primetime face-off, basically in the NFC Championship, and we barely won that by the skin of our teeth. And also, we gotta give a shout to iSports Radio's Patreon supporters, Bay Area Raised Apparel, and Marcus Los Great. So there's that shout-out right there. And without any further delay, let's get on into the action. So we'll start off with college basketball just because that's pretty important. It's a huge deal. So USC and UCLA are playing right now. Well, they'll be playing in a little bit as they'll. I'm sorry, y'all. My guest is actually quite antsy to jump on here, but he's not going to be on till later on in the show. So my apologies to everyone, but my guest will be on a little bit later. So he'll have his time. But back to the Southern California sports action. So when it comes to men's basketball, USC and UCLA face each other tonight. And honestly, it's basically crunch time for both these teams. USC took one on the chin on Tuesday as they got decimated by Arizona. It was not pretty. They lost 91-71 in front of a packed house at the Galen Center, and that was not fun for USC. So USC fell to 14-5, the same record as UCLA, ironically enough, as the two square off against one another tonight. The winner will be the number 2 seed in the Pac-12 tournament, while the loser will be the number 3 seed. We could still see a number 1 versus number 2 match, or a USC versus UCLA semifinal. Before we continue, we got to give a shout out to the chat room. Mike Pat's in the chat room. He is the first one in the comments. Congratulations on that, buddy. And he says that college basketball is a big deal at this time of year. I totally agree. And we also got to say hello to Adam Karnick in the chat room. He says, good evening, Teran. Thank you, Adam and Mike, for tuning in. I appreciate you both. So back to USC. Yeah, it was very embarrassing losing to Arizona, but Arizona does not take losses kindly, as Arizona actually got beaten by Colorado the night before. So unfortunately, they sadly took one on the chin, and USC was just the victim of mad Arizona. So tonight at Pauley Pavilion, USC takes on UCLA in both of the teams' regular season finale. Even though the Pac-12 tournament isn't really considered, I kind of think of the conference tournament as postseason, but at the same time I kind of don't, just because what if someone is just like perfectly perfect, like they're undefeated, and then they somehow lose in the conference tournament finals? So that's just my food for thought right there. Like, no tournament's going to leave out an undefeated team when it comes to the NCAA tournament, or a previously undefeated team. So there's that. So for USC, they are actually ranked number 16 in the AP polls, while UCLA is right behind them at number 17. So honestly, I feel that this one is going to be a barn burner. Like, I think it could go either way. USC has gotten the better of UCLA the past 4 times, but for me, I think UCLA is going to be ready. I don't want to say, just because I'm a USC homer, I'm not trying to say USC is going to lay an egg, but I think that it's going to be a barn burner, and I think this one could come down to the wire. As Adam says, which team is more upset about the lockout, the Angels or the Dodgers? I'm not sure about that. I'll have to get back to you on that one. And then Mike Pat says that he's got to be drooling over those receivers after that combine. And then he also says FSU needs a massive run in the ACC tournament to get into the big dance. Yeah, this is basically crunch time for a bunch of these teams. As for the NFL combine, I don't know if I'll be talking about that. I feel I shouldn't. I'm not really, and this is no offense to every NFL fan, but I'm not really into those combine things. I mean, I'll look at it every now and then. Like, I'm interested in Jordan Davis out of Georgia, and I'm also interested in, I think his name is Sauce Gardner, I want to say. He's a cornerback from Cincinnati, but other than that, I'm not, like, glued into that. I kind of need a break from the NFL just because, well, obviously the Rams won the Super Bowl, and the Super Bowl was hosted at SoFi Stadium, and I pretty much kind of talked some Super Bowl action with my guests. So, honestly, I think for me, I gotta take a little break from NFL. So, it's nothing against the NFL, but I just don't want to, like, fully get into that. I just don't want to, like, waste time and say, oh, Jordan Davis, and oh, Sauce Minshew, oh, Chris Olave, so on and so forth. So, for me, I think I just need a little break from the NFL for this week. Then, once free agency starts and once the NFL draft gets underway, then I'll go back and I'll dive deep into the NFL. Unless there's some, like, big news happening. But other than that, I'm probably going to save the NFL news for possibly maybe April. It all depends. So, back to the NCAA men's basketball side of things. So, for USC and UCLA, I talked about them. I really want to see USC get the win just because I'm a homer, but I don't think it's going to be all that bad for either team. I mean, both teams will get first-round byes. My only fear for USC, however, is if they get Oregon. Like, if they get Oregon, then that could be troublesome. But I think they can handle most of these matches. Or Stanford. Like, Stanford has been a problem for USC this season. Oregon was a problem most of the time for both UCLA and USC. And Colorado has been a thorn in USC's side prior to that matchup. So, we'll see if USC can go deep into the tournament. Last year, they lost to Colorado in the semifinals, which extended that losing streak. I think it was a 7-game losing streak to Tad Boyle and the Buffs, which was darn right frustrating. It was very frustrating. But I think this is going to be a time for USC and UCLA to get it together. So, unfortunately, USC and UCLA will not be meeting in the final, but they could meet in the semifinals. I would put so much money on that. I would not be surprised if that happened. So that's that for Pac-12. Jumping on over to the Big West. So the Big West has kind of been one of the more interesting conferences. Not just because Long Beach State is my team, and it has a majority of Southern California teams, but because Long Beach State is clinched the number 1 seed. They clinched the number 1 seed with a 3-point win over UC Davis on Tuesday, and in addition, they clinched it also with UC Riverside beating Cal State Fullerton, which was a heartbreaking loss for the Titans, but the Titans still have a chance to win, or at least clinch a share of the Big West tournament crown. They do need to win tonight, and then they also need Long Beach State to lose to UC Riverside. Now, UC Riverside is an interesting team. They actually are the most under-the-radar team in the Big West, and I think that team can do so much damage in the Big West Conference tournament. I feel that the Highlanders are playing one of their more impressive seasons, and I didn't even know this about UC Riverside. They have 9 conference wins. Now, why is that so impressive? Because it's the first time in team history that UC Riverside men's basketball has had 9 conference wins. First time in its team's history, and it's just darn impressive that they've been able to turn the tides. Like, a lot of these teams have turned it around. Like, it's no longer UC Santa Barbara or UC Irvine as the top dog. It's now someone different. Like, Long Beach State hasn't even made the big dance since 2012. And don't even get me started on Riverside or Cal State Fullerton. But either way, I'm really looking forward to this Big West Conference men's basketball tournament. Like, I think it's very much wide open this year. I think any team could win, even, and I hate to say this, UC Davis and Hawaii. Like, it pains me to say it, but honestly, I think any team in the Big West Conference can win the Big West Conference tournament. So, currently right now, Long Beach State and UC Riverside are playing one another. Riverside leads the Beach 16-10 in the first half, which should be a nice little finish right there. Remember, Long Beach State has clinched the number 1 seed, but they can clinch the regular season championship with a win. They could also clinch it if Fullerton loses to UC Davis. The 2 teams play at Cal State Fullerton tonight at 6 p.m. So I think for me, that should be winnable for the Titans. But like I said, there's been a lot of parity in the Big West Conference. And I think any team can get hot when it truly matters. Like UC Santa Barbara had themselves a rough start in Big West Conference play just because COVID forced their games to get canceled and not rescheduled. So Santa Barbara is a team to watch for. Hawaii is a team that can get hot as of late. I already talked about UC Riverside having themselves a under-the-radar season. And then UC Irvine, the perennial juggernaut of this conference, is just, they're flying under the radar. And they want a little redemption for last year, just because they know that they can possibly hang with any of the Big West Conference teams. So that's that for the Big West Conference men's basketball. I will be having an update on that via the SoCal Supreme Sports Show Twitter account after the show. So there's that. As for NCAA women's basketball, unfortunately, jumping over to the Pac-12, it didn't go so great for USC as they got bounced in the first round, ironically enough, by their crosstown rival UCLA, as they lost 73-60, which was very heartbreaking for the Trojans. They had themselves quite a solid year, which included an upset win over Arizona, which was, I believe, in the top 5, if I'm not mistaken. It obviously sucked, but hey, what can you do? It's the Big West Conference, or not the Big West Conference, the Pac-12 tournament. The fact that USC was able to like inch their way into the tournament and go, I wouldn't say toe-to-toe with UCLA, but they kept with them for the most part. They're only down 7 at halftime, and they actually tied it up in the third quarter. But unfortunately, UCLA decided to actually play some basketball, and they scored 27 points to USC's 14, which unfortunately spelt doom for USC. So, tough way to go out for USC, but they fought tooth and nail against UCLA, and I'm happy for them. I hope they could turn it around soon. I know Larry B, who just said so freaking Cal, of course he would put freaking in there, but either way, obviously Larry is not thrilled about USC women's basketball losing to UCLA, but sun will come up tomorrow. UCLA, on the other hand, did not fare all that well. Well, I wouldn't say that, but they lost in the quarterfinals to Oregon, losing 63-60. This was kind of a little bit of a rebuilding year for UCLA, as they lost quite a bit of players to graduation, and it was just a whole lot of roster turnover, as unfortunately UCLA got bounced in the quarterfinals. They lost by 3, and like I said, they fought tooth and nail. They were up by 1 at halftime, and they were up by 3 going into the final frame. But they only put up a whopping 7 points in that fourth quarter, which was not ideal for the Bruins. So it was a tough loss for UCLA, to say the least. But they had themselves a phenomenal year, and they have a lot to be proud of. And I hope they'll be back. I feel they'll be back, and they have a good recruiting class coming in. There's no doubt in my mind that the Bruins will be back. And I know USC fans probably don't want to hear that, but it is what it is. Jumping on over to the Big West Conference in terms of women's basketball, unfortunately, it looks like no Southern California team is going to be winning the Big West Conference, unless, of course, UC Santa Barbara takes down Hawaii. But if that would be the case, then UC Irvine would be the conference champion. As, unfortunately for the Anteaters, despite having a 14-4 conference record, Hawaii actually leads the Big West Conference by a half a game, due to the fact that they have fewer conference losses, and their overall winning percentage is unfortunately better, which is very, very limiting if you're a UC Irvine fan. So UC Irvine fans are clearly rooting for UC Santa Barbara tonight, as the Anteaters took down lowly Cal State Bakersfield 67-52. As the Anteaters will just be glued to their TVs when watching Santa Barbara versus Hawaii. And if Hawaii loses, then UC Irvine will be Big West Conference champions, and they'll be the number 1 seed. All I can tell you is that Long Beach State is basically locked up as the number 3 seed, and I want to say that Santa Barbara is also the 4 seed. Santa Barbara is the 5 seed, Riverside is the 4 seed, and so on and so forth. So definitely do keep an eye out for Hawaii and UC Santa Barbara, and I think that tournament is also up for grabs as well, just because it seems to be a lot of parity this year. Once again, there is no clear-cut favorite, but at the same time, I think that every team in this conference, including Cal Poly, could pull out a surprise from underneath their jerseys. So we'll see what happens, as heck, like I said, Cal Poly could, hence the word could, beat any of these teams. We'll see, though. We'll see. They only have 2 conference wins, one being against Northridge and one being against Fullerton. So there's that. That'll do it when it comes to college men's and women's basketball. Let's jump on into the MLS, as last week LAFC and the LA Galaxy kicked off their season. LAFC won their season opener. Yay! Good job, LAFC. We are very proud of you. You took down Colorado 3-0. We are so proud of you. I feel like crying. I'm not going to, though. So this was LAFC's season opener, as they took down a solid Colorado team. Now, it's early in the season, and I can't really judge, but it's always good to beat the Colorado Rapids, especially since that was one of the few teams that kind of cost LAFC a playoff spot. So LAFC is back at it tomorrow when they play the Portland Timbers, and then next Saturday they head on over to the 305 to take on Miami. So that's going to be a fun little matchup. It's the first ever matchup between Inter Miami and LAFC. So I'm excited to see what LAFC can do. This is basically kind of I wouldn't say a rebuilding year, but it's a year where LAFC and the LA Galaxy both missed the postseason last year, and they're both trying to pick up the pieces. And honestly, I really think that both LAFC and or the LA Galaxy can make it out of, or make it to the playoffs this year. At least one of them should get in, if not both. If they both get in, awesome. If one gets in, cool. But I just don't want to see one missing the post, or I just don't want to see them both missing the postseason. Adam says, Teran makes LAFC sound like a toddler that successfully drew a scribble. Yeah, well, it's the Los Angeles Football Club. And for me, LAFC doesn't have a mascot. I can't just call them the Los Angeles Football Club just because it just sounds weird, dude. I'm not going to say that. Like, I've been pushing the LAFC to get a freaking mascot. Jumping on over to the Galaxy, however, the Galaxy kicked off their season with a successful win over NYCFC, beating them 1-0. They got a late goal from Javier Hernandez as they opened the season 1-0. So good win for the Galaxy. And thank goodness they finally got the win. Like, no more of this losing thing. Like, I'm still livid about last year of how the LA Galaxy and how they had a playoff spot. They were pretty much in the top 7 throughout the entire season. And then they wound up missing it on the last day just because they couldn't take care of business on their side and other things happened outside of their control. Maybe if the Galaxy actually just took care of business and not had to bank on other teams to do their dirty work, they wouldn't have missed the playoffs. But unfortunately, that's just how it is, and the Galaxy missed the playoffs just because they were outside of the top 7 on the final day of the season, which really stinks. So, the Galaxy will be taking on Charlotte in the first ever matchup between these two teams momentarily. It's actually one more minute until the two teams take on one another. And then next Saturday, the Galaxy will be heading on up north to the Pacific Northwest to take on Seattle, the Seattle Sounders, as that's going to be a very tough matchup. Like, Seattle always gives some of these Western Conference teams a tough matchup, no matter who you are. Like, you could be the Galaxy, LAFC, Sporting KC, all that stuff, but the Seattle Sounders are kind of like the big brother of the Western Conference, so we'll see if Seattle is able to take down the LA Galaxy. But I'd like to see the Galaxy continue their strong performance. And definitely do check out Andrew Hagenbaugh and the Soccer Scoreboard Show, hopefully going on tomorrow. I'm dying to hear about the MLS portion when it comes to the Soccer Scoreboard Show. So there is that right there. So jumping on over to the NHL, it's been a trying time for the Anaheim Ducks. And boy howdy, I am very surprised they were able to take down the Boston Bruins a few nights ago, as they beat the Bruins 4-3 on Tuesday. And I was just wondering, how the heck did they pull off that win? It was kind of a miracle, in my honest opinion, as they lost to the Islanders prior to that 4-0. They got stomped on by the Kings 4-1, and then prior to that they beat the Sharks in a shootout 4-3. So other than that, they kind of haven't really had the best of luck, as they fell to the Golden Knights 5-4, and despite going down 5-2 at one point, they almost made a comeback, but almost doesn't really count. So the Ducks, sadly, remember how they were pretty much in the top 4? They've kind of slipped down. They're down to number 5 in the Pacific Division, which is very frustrating. Like, honestly, the Ducks have plenty of time. I don't think it's over. They still have plenty of games left. They have 25 games remaining. But I would like to see the Ducks start winning more, just because I think Ducks fans are long overdue for seeing this team either having a deep Stanley Cup run or making the postseason in general. Like for me, as a Ducks fan, I would like to see the Ducks back in the postseason. It would just be better for us Duck fans. Just my opinion. As for the Kings, however, the Kings are kind of back on the up and up, as last night they defeated the Columbus Blue Jackets 4-3 in overtime. They actually were down 2-0. I want to say they were down 2-0. Or was it 3-0? Either way. Oh no, they were down 3-1. My apologies. And I guess a 2-goal deficit is the worst lead to face when it comes to hockey. But for the Kings' sake, they were able to turn the tables and get the win in overtime, which was very impressive. So good job to the Kings. They continue to do well this season. They've drastically improved, despite them losing to the Dallas Stars 4-3, which is not fun. And then they got touched down by the Bruins on Monday 7-0. That was brutal right there. So we even had Beantown Brandon and the Neutral Zone kind of making jokes on that. Definitely do check out Adam Karnick and Zach Puplis on the Neutral Zone every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, 9 p.m. Eastern. As for the Kings in the Pacific Division, they are number 2 with 67 points, 4 behind Calgary, which is quite nice. So as for the Kings, they take on the Buffalo Sabres on Sunday. Then on Monday, they take on the Boston Bruins at Boston. Then they return home on Thursday to take on the San Jose Sharks. And then next Saturday, they're hitting the road up to NorCal to take on the San Jose Sharks. So, forgot to mention the Ducks' up-and-coming games, as the Ducks take on the Sharks at, I almost said Arrowhead Pond, the Honda Center. I'm still trying to get used to not saying Arrowhead Pond. I still think it should still forever be the pond. But I digress. So the Ducks play the Sharks tomorrow at Honda Center, and then on Tuesday, the Ducks head up on down to the Windy City to take on the Chicago Blackhawks. Then on Thursday, the Ducks head down to the Country City, aka Nashville, to take on the Predators. And then next Saturday, the Ducks head on up east to Newark to take on the New Jersey Devils. And that's pretty much your game slate for next week. So, jumping on over into the NBA, and I'm only going to talk a little about this. So, we're going to save the Lakers for the second half of this show. But as for the Clippers have been actually doing somewhat impressively as of late. Obviously, they took down the Lakers this past Thursday, 132-111. But they also beat the Houston Rockets 113-100, which that's no surprise. Like, it's literally not surprising. What was surprising was last Sunday when they barely beat the Houston Rockets 99-98. And then Friday, February 25th, the first game back from All-Star break, they beat the Lakers 105-102. So the Clippers have actually been on a bit of a win streak. They've actually won 4 in a row, as they've kind of gotten past I wouldn't say the light part of their schedule, or the lightweight portion of the schedule. They have the Knicks tomorrow on primetime at Crypto.com Arena. And then the Clippers have another primetime game up in NorCal when they take on the Golden State Warriors. And then this upcoming Wednesday, the Clippers take on the Washington Wizards. Then the Clippers head up east to take on the Atlanta Hawks on Friday. And then next Sunday, the Clippers will head on up to the Motor City to take on the Detroit Pistons. So, for me, the Clippers are still in the portion of they'll be playing in the play-in game. But if they play their cards right, they could, hence the word, could make it out of the bottom of out of the 7 through 10 slot. But we don't know if they're going to get back Paul George. Kawhi looks like he's out for the rest of the season. And then they have a few other players out as well. So the Clippers are basically using what resources they have. So for me, I think the Clippers are basically, they're not like in survival mode, but the season is winding down. They have a grand total of 17 games remaining, and they should be a lock for the play-in game. Now, unfortunately, I cannot say the same for the Lakers, which has not won ever since the All-Star break ended. And on Thursday's show, I kind of talked a little bit briefly about the Lakers before the power kind of killed everything. But the Lakers have just not been able to win anything. And it's quite sad, and it's very frustrating. And when we get back from the commercial break, we'll be bagging on the Lakers. But before I go to a commercial break, we actually are going to get through the Dum Dum of the Week award really quickly. And the Dum Dum of the Week award is basically an award that I give out for someone who does something dumb. And it can be an organization, it could be a person, it could even be a dog. No offense to you dog lovers, of course. But it could go to anyone. So we're actually going to go to last week's Dum Dum of the Week. And you know what? Why not? We're just going to hand out the Dum Dum of the Week award for last week. And it's the MLB. Now, you obviously can make the debate of it could be the players' union, or it could be the owners, or it could be anybody, but the entire NFL just needs to get their stuff together and actually work out a deal. It's really annoying with these owners, and it's very, very, very frustrating, if you ask me. And I think all baseball fans can agree that we just want us to play some darn baseball. We want us to enjoy America's pastime. But instead, they're now having to cancel games left and right. Like, I think it was supposed to be last week, the Dodgers were supposed to take on the Rockies, and the Angels were supposed to take on the Oakland A's, even though I don't think the Angels would win that. But, for me, it's very frustrating for Dodgers, Angels, and Padres fans alike, and that's why I think that the MLB as a whole should be taking the Dum Dum of the Week award. So I really, really wish that the MLB would get their you-know-what together. So, yeah. The MLB, owners, players' union, everything. Mostly the owners, though. I don't blame the players just because the players they just want to play ball. But to all the owners that just can't seem to get a deal done when it comes to this whole thing, this whole lockout, you are last week's Dum Dum of the Week award recipient. So dumb. You are really Wait. Hold up, my guy. I gotta turn you up real quick. Say that again for the people that aren't listening.
You are so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
And then in addition to Dum Dum of the Week, for last week, when I talked with my brother about the Rams and the Lakers, I gotta give myself a mini Dum Dum of the Week award to myself for forgetting the read from a couple weeks ago, or the previous time I did the SoCal Supreme Sports Show, and I was so sidetracked with everything that I totally forgot the read, and I'm like, oh no, I forgot the read, so I'm giving myself a mini Dum Dum of the Week award from the last time I went live, so I'm the mini Dum Dum of the Week award from the previous episode.
So dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
But it doesn't stop there. So, for this week's Dum Dum of the Week award recipient, it also kind of has to go to me as well. And you're probably wondering, well, Teran, why are you giving yourself two Dum Dum of the Week awards? So, this week was kind of a troublesome week. Well, not a troublesome week, but it was just a long week for me, obviously working and all that. But I actually was at the house by myself, and long story short, my mom was on vacation. She went on a cruise, and I had the house to myself. So, that wasn't the Dum Dum of the Week award. No, I didn't throw a party, but the Dum Dum of the Week award, or why I'm getting it, is because I went out to check the plants at night, and to my dismay, I accidentally locked the door and left my key in the house. In addition, I didn't have a spare key, and every other door was locked. Yeah, I panicked quite a bit, and God bless my neighbor. I went to my next door neighbor, and I asked them for a screwdriver so I can get into my house, and fortunately I was able to, and it was quite the relief factor. But that's not why I got Dum Dum of the Week award. So the reason why I'm Dum Dum of the Week award for this week is not because I had to ask my neighbor for a screwdriver, but I also just remembered when I got in that I remembered that my mom told me that she gave a spare key to one of her friends that does not live too far. And I just realized that, and I'm like, oh my god, I totally forgot about that. So I was embarrassed on my own time when it came to realizing that. And I did not even need to use the screwdriver. So for my incompetence and my just stupidity and my dumbness, and for me accidentally locking myself out of the house just to check on plants at night, I am this week's Dum Dum of the Week award recipient. Wait, my guy, I gotta turn you up one more time. Say it again.
You are so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
And that is the Dum Dum of the Week award recipients. So there's actually an honorable mention, and that was to the Washington football team. Oh, I'm sorry, not the Washington football team, the Washington Commanders, who made an offer to Patrick Mahomes, or they checked on Patrick Mahomes on if he was going to, on if he wanted to sign with the Commanders. This was courtesy of Fanside. The Commanders reportedly called the Chiefs to inquire about Patrick Mahomes. Now, I didn't give them the Dum Dum of the Week award, but are the Chiefs really going to part with Patrick Mahomes? No. So, I'm surprised they had the cojones to even call the Commanders, or I'm sorry, to call the Chiefs about Patrick Mahomes. But there's no way Patrick Mahomes is going to be parting with the Chiefs. No way, no how. And they're taking on that big of a contract? Washington is so desperate for a quarterback. And I'm sorry, Mike Pat, but that is just straight up dumb. But I'm not going to give him the Dum Dum of the Week award just because we're kind of pressed for time. We have to go to a commercial break because our guest is probably chomping at the bits to get on here. So when we come back, we will bring on our guest to talk about some Lakers and have them bash them. So you are listening to the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after a word from these messages.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Davidson.
It's your boy, Dentarius Lava.
And we are the hosts of Fast Break here on IE Sports Radio, where we discuss everything in the world of basketball from prep to the pros.
You guys should definitely check us out, man. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We got all the basketball information you guys need, so we look forward to you guys listening in.
And please do, because we are the best basketball show on this side of the Mississippi. And please do check us out on Twitter at FastBreakISR. D-Lock, where's our time again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That gives you guys plenty of time on a Sunday.
Tune in.
It's IE Sports Radio. It is your direct feed for all that is sports. It is Philly Sports Talk with Cash and Chris every Tuesday night right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Philly Sports Talk with Cash and Chris is the most comprehensive view on Philadelphia sports exclusively right here on IE Sports Radio. You know what it is, your direct feed for all that is sports. Tuesday night, IE Sports Radio, Philly Sports Talk with Cash and Chris.
What's good, fight fans? It's your boy, Marcus Los Great, here to give you what you want, here to give you what you need. Yeah, man. Yeah. I'm coming to you live, straight from your mama's basement with a crispy, awesome white tea. We are coming to you live every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And welcome back to the second half of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. All right, everybody, now it's time for the second half of the show, and it's probably the second half that everyone has been waiting for. It's time to bring on my guest. My guest is back by popular demand, as he is a diehard Lakers fan, and he and I are both Lakers fans. It has been so darn frustrating, and we are here to bag on the Lakers, roast them like a Thanksgiving ham. Ladies and gentlemen, back for his umpteenth time on the SoCal Supreme Sports Show, Teran Rodriguez, my brother. How you doing, Justin?
Well, I'm doing okay. Outside of the fact that, like you said, the Lakers are just, they're. Is it safe to say stick a fork in them? To jump on your Thanksgiving dinner pun.
Perhaps it was actually Christmas, but oh well. But yeah.
Okay, whatever. Yeah, same idea.
Perhaps. And Mike Pat in the chat room says nobody feels sorry for Lakers fans. I gotta say, and yeah. He's a Wizards fan, though, so no offense, Mike. Like, I get what he's trying to say, though, but we're kind of the true blue Lakers fans.
Yeah. I've been a Lakers fan my entire life, since I was probably maybe, I don't know, 2 years old. Our grandmother, I should say. When she was with us, she would always bring up the story that, I would always be, I'd be watching the NBA Finals with Magic and Michael with her in my high chair, So I was pretty much indoctrinated to be a Lakers fan from day one, of day one of my of me being alive. That is, and yeah. Other than that, I'm doing okay. I mean, it's hot out right now. I hear it's hot where you guys are too.
Actually, no, it's not. Where I'm at in Newport Beach.
Oh, you were earlier.
Yeah, it was kind of hot. Like, currently right now it is 57 where I'm at. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's been rather breezy. So, nice little, like, winter-ish breeze. So.
I know early in the week, I've been listening to podcasts from across the nation, and it's been in some cases you guys along with the East Coast have gone through like heat waves and stuff. But I guess it was just a brief stint.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So yeah, the weather has been quite up and down, and I just gotta say, The weather report is not all that it's cracked up to be. Everyone's thought that it was going to rain on Friday. It didn't really rain in the afternoon, and I felt bad because I took my jacket and unfortunately I left my umbrella at work, but I will survive.
Yeah, that happens here in Texas too. I mean, the weather here in Texas is even more unpredictable. So.
Mm-hmm. All right, but enough about the weather, as we are not meteorologists. Let's talk some Lakers. So, the Lakers have not won a game ever since the All-Star break ended. So, how concerned are you when it comes to the Lakers going forward in terms of possibly making into the play-in game?
I was going to say it depends on what you mean by going forward. If you're talking short term, just this season, I mean, I've pretty much lost faith in this team, in this Lakers team. I mean, it seems like they can't win a game to save their lives.
Mm-hmm.
They've lost 7 of their last 8. I think, if I'm doing my math correctly, 11 of their last 14. In those 14 games, their only wins have come against Portland with no Damian Lillard or CJ McCollum. Mm-hmm. New York, who they needed overtime to beat because they missed 4 out of 5 free throws in the last minute, and Utah. For whatever reason, that's the only team they seem to either match up or have any interest in playing. But outside of that, I mean, I had to, after that New Orleans game, I text you. That was when I texted you and said I need to call and I need to call in and weigh in on and rant and rail about this because that game against New Orleans, along with not last night's game, a couple nights ago against the Clippers, were 2 of maybe the 2 worst games for the Lakers all season long. I mean, that was embarrassing. I don't know if you saw those games, but the way they were playing, just like it was that game against New Orleans was like a Shaq and a Fool highlight reel. I mean, just terrible passes, tripping all over themselves basically, and losing by 28 points, the cherry on top. With in a game that CJ McCollum, who's now with the New Orleans Pelicans, it wasn't even one of his best games, and they lost, and this is even worse. As a Laker fan, I am furious that the Lakers got swept by the Clippers in a season where, for the most part, they've had neither of their 2 stars, Kawhi Leonard or Paul George, and I want to say in all 4 of those games they've had at least Russell Westbrook and LeBron James. How does that happen? I mean, it makes no sense. If the way they're playing, and you look at the schedule coming up, they've got Golden State tonight. They're 0-2 against the Warriors. They've got the San Antonio Spurs Monday night. You know, that's a big game because if you look at the standings, they're, I believe, only 3 games. They're only 3 games ahead of the San Antonio Spurs for one of those final two play-in spots. I don't know why I don't have the standings up, but anyway, and then you've got the Rockets who aren't going anywhere. So that's at least one win I see that they have that I can see winning. Then you got Washington at home against Washington. They're not going anywhere either. Bradley Beal's out for the season. But then the rest of the season, you basically got playoff or at least play-in teams. Phoenix, Toronto, Minnesota, Toronto, Washington. Again, they're not going anywhere. Cleveland, Philadelphia, New Orleans, Dallas, Utah, New Orleans again, Denver, Phoenix, Golden State, Oklahoma City, who we've already lost twice to this season, and Denver. So you look at the rest of the schedule, you're thinking, where do the wins come from? And as I mentioned before, if I could pull up my standings properly here, the Lakers are currently 9th place, just half a game ahead of New Orleans. If they lose to Golden State tonight, they'll be tied with New Orleans for the 9 and 10. And I want to say New Orleans has the tiebreaker. Mm-hmm. So which would mean that if the season ended tonight, assuming the Lakers lost, they would be in New Orleans for a one and done play-in game. And then you've got Portland right before that. At the 11, they're just 2 games ahead of them, and they're 3.5 ahead of San Antonio for 12, and Sacramento 4.5. So yeah, they're way closer to the bottom than they are to the 6th seed. That ship has definitely sailed. With only 18 games left to go. I take it back. 20 games left to go in the season. I mean, do I think they can survive and get into the play-in tournament? Sure. But if you look at the schedule and the way they've been playing lately, I can't hold my breath.
Yeah, it's just been a tough time, like, for Lakers fans. And yeah, I haven't even been watching a whole lot of these games. Like, even the primetime games. Like, I just don't find myself being anywhere interested in watching the Lakers this year, just because they don't play hard. They're practically
with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're injury riddled. They're old. They don't play defense. It's just a joke, man. And people bag on the NBA enough as is because they don't play defense and they're overpaid all that much. But for me, it's just, for the Lakers, it's just very frustrating just because they had some expectations going in and they've basically fallen flat on their face. And I eventually found the reason why the Lakers are keeping Frank Vogel and they're not firing them, because they've been through a lot of tough situations. And for me, I think that they shouldn't even fire Frank Vogel. Like, firing Vogel does not change anything. Firing Vogel basically does squat. And I think... Go ahead.
I was going to say, but before you go on, elaborate on those tough situations with Frank Vogel, because this is the first I've heard of this.
So this was according to Adrian Wojnarowski on Twitter, and it basically said it was basically just talking about how the Lakers just had players that were in and out of the lineup and whatnot, and how they haven't had a whole lot of players going into the lineup, and they've had to have like 30 different lineups as the two primary reasons, I'm told. One, they are accounting for the fact that Anthony Davis is out and has missed a lot of games this season. Kendrick Nunn hasn't played yet this season, a guard they signed that they thought could impact this team, but ultimately they don't feel right in LA right now that it would make a difference to let Frank Vogel go. This is a team that wants to still get into the play-in. To get Anthony Davis back, or to get Anthony Davis back as well, to find a way to get their group. And they still have a coach in Frank Vogel who has won a championship there, who has had success in the playoffs. And listen, it is hard for any coach to survive the kind of games the Lakers have had this week, where you don't see effort and you're getting blown out. That can't go on forever. But the Lakers still would like to get through the rest of the season with Frank Vogel. And once again, this was courtesy of Adrian Wojnarowski on NBA Today. And I think that is totally relatable. And it's not all Frank Vogel's fault, because he's not the one turning the ball over. He's not the one just leisurely going up and down the court. He's not the one making Shaq and a fool every single night, for the most part. Like, it's basically the players. And while LeBron has been great, obviously Father Time has been taking a toll on him, despite him being the all-time points leader in both postseason and regular season. So, for me, I am totally behind the Lakers keeping Frank Vogel, honestly. And it's gotten to the point where the Lakers aren't even the most interesting basketball team in Southern California. Like, even Long Beach State and Cal State Fullerton men's basketball are more interesting than the Lakers, just because both of those teams are alma maters, mind you. They're actually the number 1 and 2 seed of the up-and-coming conference tournament. And it would be quite fun to see those two battle it out for the conference tournament championship. Like, that would be pretty funny. But anyway, back to the Lakers.
Wow, this is the first I've heard of that. What are their records?
So, for their records,
we're going off. I'm sorry, we're going off on a tangent here. But this is the first I've heard of Long Beach State and Cal State Fullerton. Like, the only reason why that piques my interest is because March Madness is coming up. You think either of those teams have a shot at getting into the dance?
One of them will. I don't think both will, just because the Big West Conference isn't as, like, strong like the Big East, the Pac-12, the SEC, the Big Ten, so on and so forth. But as of right now, Long Beach State is the number 1 seed, followed by Cal State Fullerton. And Cal State Fullerton can actually clinch a share of the Big West Conference regular season title with a win tonight over UC Davis, and if Long Beach State loses. And currently Long Beach State is down, but in terms of seeding, that's pretty much set in stone for Long Beach and Fullerton, who are the number 1 and 2 seed. So,
okay,
that's kind of my little tangent right there. And yeah, maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later. But back to the Lakers.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to rag about the Lakers?
Okay. Yeah. To go back to your point about Frank Vogel. So, well, let me ask you a question. So, I totally get Frank. Them not firing Frank Vogel. At least not this year. I mean, there's only 20 games left in the season. There's really no point in firing him right now, and I understand he hasn't had a lot to work with, and he's had to make adjustments on the fly. But what about going forward? Do you think he'll still be the coach next year?
I think so. I think he'll be the coach next year, but if it gets to the point where if he has unexcusable losses, then the ice that he's walking on will crack. And it's not all his fault. Like, you kind of have to blame upper management, like Rob Pelinka, for bringing in all these old guys And if this were like 5 or so years ago,
I would put the blame on LeBron too. He had a lot of influence in bringing in players like Russell Westbrook and Carmelo Anthony.
Oh yeah, him. Yeah,
I mean, not that Melo hasn't had a good year, but with the Russell Westbrook thing, and gutting their roster, who was actually ranked really high in defense the last couple of years. Letting Alex Caruso walk, trading Russell Westbrook. Kyle Kuzma and Kyle Kuzma, KCP, and whoever else they had to give up in order to get Russell Westbrook. What's that?
Montrezl Harrell.
Oh yeah, Montrezl Harrell. Yeah, that he was a big energy guy. That was a bad loss. He didn't have a good postseason, but still, just a big energy guy. Just those guys alone could have gotten us more wins and would have at least been on the bubble to get the 5 or 6 seed. And with LeBron James alone, you should be able to do that. But they've had so many losses. Are you aware that the Lakers have the second most losses in crunch time, in clutch time?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. I think including that loss against Dallas the other night, they've lost 20 games this season in the clutch. And what I mean by clutch is losing by like 5 points or less in the last 5 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
Only the Indiana Pacers, have more losses in such a category, and they're not going anywhere. They're in rebuild mode.
Yes, and believe it or not, now that you mentioned the Dallas loss, I want to say the Lakers only scored 4 points in the last 4 or so minutes, or was it 2 points in the last 4 or so minutes?
Yeah. I watched that game. They couldn't buy a basket.
Yeah, it was painful to basically even read the recap of that. And it's like, oh my god! It's like it just is so.
It was there. It was right there for the taking, and they couldn't do it. They were down by as many as I believe 18 points in that game to the Dallas Mavericks. They came back and took the lead, but they couldn't hold on to it.
Yep.
And outside of LeBron James, they just don't have the talent or the chemistry in order to be able to put together even a playoff roster. The way it looks, again, it looks like they're going to finish 9th place at best. And meaning, again, they'll start the postseason in a one and done play-in tournament situation, meaning they'd have to win twice just to get into the playoffs. And meaning, even if they're lucky enough to get past New Orleans, Portland, or San Antonio, whoever they be facing in that first play-in game, they'll have to go through either Minnesota or the LA Clippers, and guess, just to get that 8th seed, and guess what their record is guess what their combined record is against both of those two teams.
0-6 or 0-7?
Correct.
Yep.
They have yet to beat Minnesota, and as we talked about, actually they did beat Minnesota once.
Oh, so 1-5, or 1-6.
They're 1-6. Yes. Yeah, they're 1-6. They got one game left against Minnesota, but Yeah, I have zero faith unless Anthony Davis is able to come back healthy. I have zero faith that they're getting into the playoffs, even if they can get out of the play-in tournament.
Yeah, my faith is basically dwindling. The Lakers got to cancel the season, throw it away, flush it down the toilet, basically just start fresh. Like the late Kobe Bryant's probably looking down and shaking his head like, what the heck are these guys doing? And I can't blame him if he really is doing that. So,
not at all. If he were still with us, he would be ripping him a new one, including LeBron.
He'd probably be showing up to the practices like he did that one time where he called everybody soft like Charmin.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Okay. So that's actually what you said about shutting down the season is actually the perfect segue for what I wanted to get into. See, before I called in, I was listening to the Mason and Ireland podcast from yesterday, and Kendrick Perkins went on First Take yesterday following the Clippers loss of the Clippers, and said that the Lakers should shut down LeBron James for the rest of the season because he says the Lakers aren't going anywhere. He barely even has any faith that they'll even make the play-in tournament. And Mason and Ireland got into a huge debate about this. Steve Mason says shut him down. There's no point. They're not going anywhere. Just like Kendrick Perkins said, and since we know he has at least 1 year left with the Lakers, what's the point of even playing him and risking him getting hurt and wasting energy even? And John Ireland, on the other hand, says, look, the NBA is an entertainment product more than anything else. Why would you take away the star attraction? Why would you take away the star attraction, not just of the Lakers, but of the league? So you get my point, or their points. What say you about the Lakers and LeBron? Should the Lakers shut down LeBron James?
It depends on their point of view when it comes to the season. If they really think they can make the play-in tournament, if they really believe in themselves that much, then by all means just keep playing LeBron. But if they're all basically come to agreement that they're not going to be, they won't make the playoffs and they won't go deep, because you look at the Western Conference, 1 through 4 is basically contenders such as the Warriors, the Suns, the Grizzlies, and maybe the Jazz. I put a big maybe by Utah. And then that's pretty much that. Those are my 4 teams that I think can get to the second round. Everyone else is either too inconsistent or they just don't have that it factor. So, I mean, when it comes to the Lakers making the playoffs, like let's say they actually make the playoffs. Let's say they make the play-in game. Let's say they make the playoffs. They'd still have to play the Warriors, which have basically the Splash Brothers and gobs of talent. And then they also could contend with Phoenix, which is on a tear. They have Cam Johnson, DeAndre Ayton, Devin Booker's eventually going to get back soon. And then the list goes on and on. So,
what about Chris Paul? Will he be back in time for the playoffs?
Perhaps. That still would be another notch when it comes to the Lakers. So, for me, I don't know if it would be worth seeing the Lakers just play LeBron and risk losing his longevity. Because, let's be honest, the Lakers aren't... Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just wanted to reiterate my point about the Lakers' chances of even getting into the playoffs. The best case scenario from here on out is that the Lakers get out of the play-in tournament and get the 8th seed. That's the best they can hope for. No way they're getting the 7 because again, they have to win their first play-in game, and their second play-in game is against the loser of the Minnesota Clippers. Assuming everything holds serve, it would be Minnesota and the Clippers for the other play-in game.
Good point.
And the winner of that game gets the 7th. The loser faces the winner of the Lakers and whoever else they'd be playing for the 8th seed. And the 8th seed will be facing Phoenix. Because there's no way Golden State. There's no way Golden State's going to have enough time or games in order to be able to catch Phoenix at this point. The Phoenix has got the number 1 seed locked up. Chris Paul or no Chris Paul. So if the Lakers do end up getting the 8th seed and they face Phoenix in the first round, it really depends on Chris Paul's health. And to that matter, Anthony Davis' health. If Anthony Davis comes back and Chris Paul somehow isn't able to come back for that first round series, I think there's a chance the Lakers could upset the Phoenix Suns. I don't know how long Devin Booker's going to be out. He should definitely be back before the playoffs start. I don't know what his injury status is. I just know that Chris Paul's going to be out for a while and maybe not even start until maybe not even come back until the playoffs start. There's a chance, that the Lakers that the Lakers could pull off an upset, but it's very slim. A lot would have to happen, in order for the Lakers to pull that off. I mean, how healthy, how strong is Anthony Davis going to be when he comes back from his injury? He has not been healthy for pretty much an entire calendar year for the most part. And LeBron has had to carry so much load. How much energy is he going to have when come playoff time? Assuming the Lakers are lucky to even get that 8th seed. So I'm pretty much in the middle. I would probably lean more towards Steve Mason and Kendrick Perkins, and the Lakers should shut down LeBron James. I think LeBron should, however, have that call and just look at things from a realist standpoint, and go to the Lakers and say, hey, we're probably, at least if I were him, I would say, look, we're probably not going to go far, if anywhere, this season. Let's shut it down for this year and focus on next year and focus on how we can improve the roster. I don't want to be traded. That's my next question, by the way. I'm committed, at least in the short term, to winning another championship here. Let's hit the reset button, or at least let's shut it down for the year, and let's see how we can improve this team going forward for next year.
Yeah, and those are some valid points, and I'm also in the middle as well. Like, I think LeBron should be the one with the call, and if he wants to get shut down, then he'll get shut down. But again, it really does not. Signs don't really point toward the Lakers getting out of the first round, even if they do make it into the play and win both of those games. So it's just going to be an uphill climb, and with every loss, it gets even tougher. And we'll probably jump off in a little bit just because it's almost time for the Lakers, and Justin's got to see that. But to close out on this, what will the Lakers?
Well, I don't have to see it right away. I mean, it's up to you. It's your show. We can go as long as you want. It's up to you.
We'll probably go for another 10 minutes. Like, we don't have another show until about on the top of the hour, but we still don't want to go too long. But all in all, I think I've pretty much said my bit on the Lakers. Once again, I think Laker fans have the right to be disappointed, and they're obviously getting frustrated at the players as well. But the players, in my opinion, they just got to do what they can to just not, pay attention. Just because the Laker fans, as Kyle Kuzma would said, they're on your tags or they're on your tails every night. And he couldn't have said it better, because Laker fans expect greatness when it comes to their team, and tied for the most championships in the NBA when it comes to history. You obviously have the right to be frustrated. So it's basically we're just going to have to ride it out and then basically just see what happens. And if the Lakers make the play-in, then they go from there. But if they don't make the play-in, then they have a lot of questions to address this offseason. Who stays, who goes? Who do they draft? If they have any more draft capital left. That's my biggest concern. I don't know if the Lakers have any draft capital. And I also want to say that...
Not much.
Yeah. Them trading Ivica Zubac was probably the worst thing that could have happened to them, because they got nothing, and I mean nothing, from Mike Muscala. So, yeah.
I forgot
Great job,
about
Lakers.
him.
Great job, Lakers. Great job. So, got any other things? Go ahead.
I'm sorry. You talked about Lakers fans. That's actually one of my. That's actually, and we can go real quickly about this. That was one of the questions I wanted to bring up to you. Draymond Green, he has a podcast simply called the Draymond Green Show, and he talked about the Lakers fans booing. Vocally, during that game against the Pelicans, and he said in his podcast, and I quote, "I have to speak on the boos Sunday night. I thought that was insane, to be quite honest. From an organization that has had so much success to start booing when things aren't going right, that's kind of waxing. And then everyone gets upset if a player comes out and says, we'll forget them fans. They're not with us anyway. Then everyone seems to get upset and uptight about it. But as athletes, we're supposed to just sit back and be like, oh, they're booing us. Quite frankly, most of those people in that arena don't know how it feels to get booed. I guess I can cut a little slack in you not understanding how it feels to get booed by your own. For me, I actually like getting booed. Like when I come to Crypto.com Arena, the Lakers arena, boo me all you want. That's fine. Cavs fans did it all weekend at All-Star Weekend. I enjoy it. But to get booed by your own fans, it's very distasteful and disgraceful, and I was shocked to see that. End quote. Real quickly, what are your thoughts on what Draymond Green said, and your thoughts on Lakers fans booing? Well, they've been booing a lot, actually. Not just at that New Orleans game, but that was really they were furious that night, and for good reason.
So my take on Draymond Green's little comment is, for me, I think it all depends on the person. Like, if you're a person who gets booed and you use that as motivation, that's basically the fuel for the fire to help you work hard, to help you get that extra rep in, to make sure that you don't get booed anymore or you don't mess up. But I think he was talking about fans from opposing teams, fans of opposing teams booing him. Like Cleveland
Cleveland Cavs fans for obvious reason, because of all the battles they fought. You know, Cavs and the Warriors in the finals. You know, Lakers fans booing Draymond Green. Those are fans of opposing teams. But he doesn't like fans of his own team or fans or any home fans booing their own. That's what bothered him. Huh?
Yeah, and obviously it all depends on the team's season. Like, obviously, if it's just a lost cause, then fans do have the right to boo, but sometimes you just don't want to take it too far. Like, if you're frustrated, you don't want to, like, go personal on them to the point where security has to come kick you out. That would be a little out of bounds, if you ask me. So, for me, I think it would basically be all about how much bantering and booing home fans do to their team. Like, if it's to a point where the team just played flat out awful, then they have the right to be booed. But as long as they're not, like, calling out the families, like, you never want to call out a family. Like, that's when it gets personal. So, I think for me, as long as the fans aren't, like, going in too personal, I think home fans are entitled to boo their team, but as long as they don't take it too far, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I have a completely different take on Draymond Green's comments. I think the fans. First of all, I think the fans do have a right to boo their own team, you know, when appropriate, because in particular with this Lakers thing, they're not just booing the Lakers because of losing. You see, the Lakers are going to, or any team for that matter, are going to have dry spells and dry periods where they're just, they're rebuilding and they're not winning. I mean, I know Lakers fans were upset and booing, during the 6 years where they just, where they had 20-win seasons and stuff. But that's not really all their fault. They just weren't good enough to win. I think it is apropos in this case, not just because the Lakers are losing, but it's the way the Lakers are losing that's bothering me and so many hardcore Lakers fans. I mean, again, you have LeBron James, you have Russell Westbrook, and Carmelo Anthony, and that just looks like a team, and they've been playing so disjointed. Not just disjointed, but sloppy. Like, there was one moment where somebody threw a pass and I forget, it ended up in one of the benches. I don't know if it was the Lakers bench or the New Orleans bench, but it was like, who was that for? And it was just such sloppy play and the body. And I think what really bothers the Lakers fans the most is the body language of a lot of the guys on the team, including LeBron James. They just seem very disinterested, and it seems like they're just mailing it in. And eventually, it's not just about winning or winning championships. It gets to the point where, look, we know we're not good enough to win, but at least have a sense of pride when you're going on the court and especially putting on a Lakers uniform. You got to have pride, because this is the most heritage franchise in the NBA. No question about it. I mean, I know you have some Boston Celtics fans in the chat that may disagree with me, but that's just the way I see it. And they're the purple and gold standard. And if you're going to put on a Lakers uniform, even if no matter what, you come and you play hard and you play to win, and you play to, and you give the fans what they paid their hard-earned money for, and that's a lot of money. I mean, I'm looking at the schedule, and tonight's game against Golden State, the cheapest seat is $166 for a Lakers home game against the Golden State Warriors. You know what the cheapest? You know how much? You know what the cheapest seat is for a San Antonio Spurs game at home against the Lakers in San Antonio?
I imagine $80.
$34.
Oh,
just a fraction of a cheap seat Lakers game. So it's just not fair to those fans who paid their hard-earned money to see some of the biggest stars in the game, and they play like they're the Washington Generals.
Oh, yes, yeah.
It's true. That's exactly what they played like that night.
Mm-hmm. Totally agreeable. And again, like you said, basically is not cheap for a Lakers game. Like, that much money just to see the Lakers put up a goose egg or find a way to lose when they're up, like, it really just doesn't sit well. And Lakers fans' price of admission does give them that right to express feelings. But like I said, as long as they're not going out of bounds, then it's not all that bad. But still, I think that for Lakers fans who are paying hard-earned money, especially when they're having to go to one of the busiest venues in all of California, it just doesn't sit well. And especially when your rival is basically beating you down. Like, the first 3 games were close, but then the 4th matchup between the Lakers and Clippers, it was just ugly. And Lakers fans probably were rolling their eyes and probably heading for the exits after the 3rd quarter. It was just downright terrible. And when you put on that purple and gold, you basically have a huge responsibility. With all that pride and history comes so much, dedication you have to pour your heart and soul into, because you're not only playing for the organization, playing for the fans, and probably like 10,000 pairs of eyes that see you go up and down the court and see you try to get their team to win. So that's my little spiel. Got anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
I'll just add, no, not really. There was a couple questions. I wrote down, but we could get into that some other time. Well, although I really want to ask you this, just real quickly: should the Lakers bench Russell Westbrook? There've been calls to do that, and Frank Vogel's already done that a couple times.
I think it will. I think they should. I think that'll discipline Russell Westbrook, and it'll make him think that he's got to work harder and cut down on the turnovers. And
maybe give DJ Augustine a chance to start and see what he can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I am totally down for benching Westbrook, and he can make himself a good player off the bench. It's just that he can't just turn the ball over every night and day, and it just won't work. Like, you're supposed to help win the game. That's why the Lakers brought you in, to help you win, to help win. But instead, you're just turning the ball over, and you're weakly on Shaq Naful. I even said this earlier, that I would not be surprised if Russell Westbrook is the Shaqton MVP.
Wait, what?
I said on an earlier show of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show that I would not be surprised if Russell Westbrook was the Shaq and a Fool MVP.
Oh, the Shaq and a Fool MVP. Yeah. Well, that's rough. That should be the JaVale McGee Award.
Exactly. Because he has been on Shaq and a Fool quite a bit. So.
Yeah. I mean, with good reason. I mean, but in all seriousness, it's just sad because I mean, he really was a great player. It's just like, what the heck happened to him this year? It's like, did he just all of a sudden get old?
Mm-hmm.
And he has 1 year left. I think he's being owed like $46 million next year. Like what happens to him after that? I mean, he's definitely not going to get that money anymore. You know, I think he can still be somewhat of a serviceable player. Maybe like a sixth or seventh man role.
Mm-hmm.
On a championship contending team, if they need a backup point guard. But I think his days after next year, or maybe even after this year, you know, depending on what happens to the Lakers next year, I think his days as a starter are over.
Yeah, I think he's pretty much cooked, and I hate to say this, but I think the Lakers lost the Wizards-Lakers deal, or the Russell Westbrook trade.
Oh, yeah, without question.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And it would have been great if they could have traded.
The only thing the Wizards are missing is a point guard.
Yep.
But if the Wizards had a star point guard on that roster, they'd be in the playoffs.
Yeah, and unfortunately they cannot clone whatever his name is that's been doing well for them as of late. Their only bright spot outside of LeBron. Like, unfortunately, they cannot clone whatever his name is. Not Malik Monk, but
Taylor Horton-Tucker?
Not Taylor Horton.
Or DJ Augustine?
Kendrick Nunn.
Oh, yeah, he hasn't even played a game.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, Malik Monk is... they cannot clone Malik Monk. Yeah, Kendrick...
Oh.
I'm getting Nunn and Monk. All those Nunn and Monk. And then Pope. Got to throw in Pope as well.
All right. I'll let you get out of here, but before I do, I just want to end on good notes. Since we were talking about heritage programs and pride, and you know, first of all, I want to steal a line from the great Leon Kaplan, who hosts an awesome car talk show on 790 KBC every Sunday morning from 8 to 10 Pacific time. He always says, you know, never put on a BS show, put on a CS show, customer service. It relates to, giving fans, their money's worth when it comes to stepping on the court and wearing that jersey with pride. And I reiterate this because I'm watching ESPN now, where Coach K, Mike Krzyzewski, legendary Duke coach, has just coached his last game for Duke, and he's addressing the crowd right now, and it's a beautiful thing. I mean, you look at that crowd right now. It's amazing. Just the sheer emotion, and from mostly college kids who weren't even alive when he started coaching and won and started winning those national championships with Christian Laettner and Tyrone Hill and all those guys. to see the love and admiration and respect for maybe the greatest college coach in men's college basketball history. Like people are even in tears, like, and it just shows you how much pride and how much class his coaching, mentorship, philosophy has really inspired the Duke alumni, as well as other college basketball coaches and players, past, present, and future.
Mm-hmm.
So congratulations on a successful career, Coach K, Mike Krzyzewski. He deserves this honor.
Well said, Justin, and I couldn't agree more. Even though Duke did not win that game, I don't care. The final score does not reflect on how amazing Coach K has done for the amazing work that Coach K has done for Duke, having them perennially good year in and year out. And honestly, college basketball is not going to be the same without Coach K. Basketball in general is not going to be the same without Coach K. I remember he coached.
No.
I remember he coached Kobe Bryant and that Team USA.
Yeah, those USA basketball teams.
Two gold medals, and it was just a beautiful thing. So I'm glad
everybody had Coach K's back. Yeah, the greatest players in the league. That redemption team in 2008. After coming off just winning the bronze in 04. What he did to get the USA back on top in that Olympics and beyond. I mean, he deserves a heck of a lot of credit for that. So he'll go on to be not just the greatest college coach, but one of the greatest coaches, period, in basketball history. Is he in the Hall of Fame? He should be.
He should be, yes. So
the Basketball Hall of Fame, I mean.
Yeah, I don't know that off the top of my head, but I imagine he should and will be. Like, there's no debate on that.
Oh, yeah.
But on that note, that should do it for today's episode of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Real quick, we just got to head right back to the UC Riverside Long Beach State matchup, as it's been a barn burner with UC Riverside leading most of the way, but now Long Beach State has unfortunately lost its lead. They are now tied with UC Riverside 58-58. So it's going to be a barn burner between UC Riverside and Long Beach State going forward, as there's 3 minutes and change left in the contest. But without any further delay, let's get on out of here, because in about 15 minutes we have another show going on. You dig?
Real quick, he was inducted in the Basketball Hall of Fame in 2001 by Bobby Knight.
All right.
No less.
All right, cool. Now let's get on out of here, because we have a show going on in 15 minutes. You dig?
All right, thank you, Teran.
No problem. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. I appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you to my brother from the same mother, Justin Rodriguez, for tuning in and for being a guest. I really do appreciate you. It's always an honor to have you on. It's always an honor to have people listening in, because iSports Radio is by the fans, for the fans. Without you, we wouldn't amount to too much. Big shout out to the chat room, Mike Pat, Adam Cornick, and Larry B for popping in and listening in for a bit. I appreciate you all. I appreciate everyone that listens to this on the playback, everyone that listens to this live, everyone that listens to this at work or in the wee hours of the morning. I really do appreciate you. For my brother, Justin Rodriguez, and for everyone here at iSports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. You all have yourselves a great rest of the weekend. Enjoy the sports action. Enjoy the Southern California sports. enjoy the up and down weather that's been happening in California. And I'll see you Monday for Set Point. Have a great weekend, and remember, SoCal is for SoCal. Peace!